depreciating against the euro. So do you think this presents a challenge for China, or is a strong renminbi essentially or essential for rebalancing a consumption-led model?
You know, even among people who agree about China's economy, there's a lot of disagreement about what the proper level of the renminbi is. I would argue that with $4 trillion worth of reserves, that accumulating more reserves to keep the renminbi lower makes absolutely no sense. And that, you know, if you think about it, a weak renminbi subsidized.
But I really want to ask you, there's been a real rapprochement between China and Russia. So do you see this economic alliance lasting?
Well, you know, in some ways, the two economies are compatible because China is a major commodities consumer and Russia is a major commodities producer. So it makes a lot of sense that they would be trading. But you know, there's a long history between the two countries as well, and it hasn't always been pleasant. So a lot of people watch this with great interest, you know.
I hope we can have you back on very soon because, sadly, I don't think these protests are going anywhere. So we're going to need your insight and have you weigh in on this. Thank you so much. That was Patrick Chauvenet, Chief Strategist at Silvercrest Asset Management and Professor at Columbia University. Time now for a very quick break, but stick around because when we return, Pippa Malmgren is on the show. I sat down with Pippa earlier today to discuss Europe and what the ECB's plans are to stimulate growth over there. Then in today's Big Deal, Edward Harrison and I are discussing Friday's jobs numbers here in the U.S., along with student loan debt. And remember, you can see all segments featured in today's show on YouTube at youtube.com/boombustrt and on Hulu at hulu.com/boom-bust. Now, we got to go, but before we do, here are a look at some of your closed FX reserves that are subject to these negative yields. So I spoke with Pippa Malmgren earlier today. Now, Pippa is president and founder of Principales Asset Management, and I asked her if this will put downward pressure on the euro. Here's what she had to say.
Well, let's understand the purpose of the exercise is to compel the owners of those assets to stop leaving them in the bank and to put them to work in the economy. So in theory, this actually should improve the velocity.
Dollars in liquidity, including asset-backed security and covered bond purchases. So will this help Europe's ailing economy?
Yeah, so when you talk to people who sit on trading floors and who are actually involved in the assets they're talking about, like the covered bonds, they're getting a little bit frightened because the ECB says we're going to buy X many, which is larger than the size of the entire market. And most of these covered bonds aren't actually available for sale for all kinds of technical reasons.
They're really up in arms about all this. So let me read you a quote from The Telegraph by a German law professor. Here it is. I have never seen such outrage in Germany at the actions of a European institution. The ECB is becoming a sink for nuclear waste. The ECB is going to buy junk bonds from Greece and Cyprus, and probably Italy, too. This is socialization of risk and is completely illegal. I can tell you there are lawsuits already in the pipeline. Now, those are very strong words. So is the ECB all words and no action because of the Germans, or are we going to see this monetary blitz here?
Well, I think we shouldn't underestimate
nationalism or separatism rising, and Scotland voted to stay in the UK, but we have a similar vote coming up in Spain, and the Catalan government says it'll hold a vote for independence from Spain on November 9th, even though Spain has said that it's illegal. So what's your take on the goings-on here?
Well, again, I see these separatist movements as part of a global trend when people get frustrated with the fact that there isn't enough money and ends can't be met, and so they start to question their government and say, wait, maybe we ought to have our own. And that was the situation in Scotland. That's what causes the British to talk about potentially leaving the EU.
Investors and fund managers at the present time.
Yeah, you know, I just finished writing a monograph for the Chartered Financial Accountants on the topic of geopolitics for fund managers and investors, precisely because there isn't even a book you can pick up these days that will tell you about how to think about the issue. And it's been off the table for most everybody's career, really, since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And we're seeing all kinds of events that are really important, like these near misses between
President and founder of Principales Asset Management. Time now for today's Big Deal. Deal time with this wonderful guy, Mr. Edward Harrison. And today we're talking about student loan debt and the jobs numbers that came out here in the U.S. on Friday. Now, the U.S. economy added 248,000 jobs in September, and unemployment dropped to 5.9%, and that's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As the two previous months' data were revised up, this looked like a really good report. However, underneath it all is an important dichotomy. So, Ed, we have this graph that you retweeted today. We want to pull it up. Now, it's on U.S. unemployment rates by education level, and it says...
Exactly.
But, you know, for me, what was enlightening and depressing at the same time, just reading over all this information for today, you know, student debt, it's linked to not only less wealth, but worse health. I mean, my goodness, that's unbelievable. So what do you make of this?
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, and that is a surprising statistic in some ways, but it's not surprising in other ways. I think that this is one of the reasons people talk about unemployment, the hidden cost of unemployment.
Right,
you know,
right.
Marshall Auerbach, who is on the show a lot, I've spoken to him about this,
yeah.
And he says that, you know, one of the reasons that we bang on about making...
Fine about that, and
right,
it does
exactly.
make you feel better. Even if you hate your boss that day, it's better that than just a short minute of stress than long-term stress.
And being free and clear of all that debt.
Right.
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, exact same thing. Now, we were both doing a little sleuthing last night about this whole student debt thing, and, you know, the one thing that really blew my mind, and yours too, I believe, it was that U.S. laws essentially create this prison for, you know, student loan debtors, where
right.
even if you declare Chapter 9 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you cannot get out of your student loan debt, which is ridiculous to me. So essentially you have to be living in total poverty, literally, actually,
right,
not essentially,
right.
literally, it said that you have to be in poverty, so obviously your student loan debt isn't first on your list of things to do. I mean, it's not funny, but it's so absurd that you have to laugh at it. Poverty or paying your student loans, that's your only choice. What's up with that?
I don't know, but, you know, when we were talking about that, and the question is obviously who benefits from that, and apparently no one does.
No one.
But you were saying it's almost as if